The summer of 1941, Europe is at war. America knows it is only a matter of time before the country gets pulled in. And in the middle of all that uncertainty, a 26-year-old center fielder from San Francisco starts hitting. And he does not stop. Game after game, week after week. Joe DiMaggio hit safely in 56 consecutive games, a stretch of baseball so absurd that no one has come within 12 games of it in the 80-plus years since. Statisticians have crunched the numbers and concluded that even for a hitter of DiMaggio's caliber, the odds were astronomical. It should not have happened. It happened anyway. That was Joe DiMaggio. 9 World Series championships in 13 seasons. 3 Most Valuable Player awards, a .325 lifetime batting average. He made the All-Star team every single year he played. He struck out just 369 times in his entire career, only 8 more than his 361 home runs. He was one of the most feared power hitters in baseball history, and pitchers could barely get him to swing and miss. Off the field, he was quiet, controlled. He did not chase fame, but fame chased him. He became the face of the New York Yankees. But here is what most people remember about Joe DiMaggio. In August 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her Los Angeles home. DiMaggio took charge of the funeral. He barred the Hollywood crowd. He barred the Kennedys. For the next 20 years, he had roses delivered to her crypt 3 times a week. He never remarried. When DiMaggio himself died in 1999, his attorney was by his side. According to that attorney, DiMaggio's last words were simple: "I'll finally get to see Marilyn, the greatest ball player of his generation, spent the last 37 years of his life mourning the woman he could not hold on to." This is his story. Giuseppe Paolo DiMaggio was born on November 25, 1914, in Martinez, California, a small town about 25 miles northeast of San Francisco. He was the 8th of 9 children born to Giuseppe and Rosalia DiMaggio, who had emigrated from Sicily to the fishing communities of the San Francisco Bay Area. Giuseppe Sr. was a fisherman, as his father had been before him, and his father before that. Generations of DiMaggios had made their living from the sea. When Joe was still a toddler, the family moved to the North Beach neighborhood of San Francisco, a vibrant Italian immigrant community where Giuseppe could find better fishing waters. He dreamed that his 5 sons would follow him onto the boats, continuing the family tradition that stretched back across the Atlantic to the old country. 2 of Joe's older brothers, Tom and Michael, fulfilled their father's wishes. They became fishermen. But Joe wanted nothing to do with it. The smell of dead fish nauseated him. He would do anything to avoid cleaning his father's boat, to escape the stench of the catch that clung to everything. Giuseppe called him lazy. He called him good for nothing. The old man could not understand why his son refused to embrace the only life he knew. The DiMaggio household was not wealthy. 9 children in a small house in North Beach, a father who worked long hours on the water, a mother who kept the family fed and clothed on modest means. Joe grew up speaking Italian at home and struggling with English at school. He was shy, quiet, and often picked on by other children because of his accent and his halting speech. But Joe had found something else. At the age of 10, he started playing baseball on the sandlots near the North Beach playground. He played third base with neighborhood kids, using rocks for bases, an old ball held together with bicycle tape, and an oar handle for a bat. They could not afford gloves, so they caught the ball with their bare hands. It hurt, but Joe did not care. He had found something he was good at. 2 of Joe's brothers, Vince and Dom, also fell in love with baseball. All 3 would eventually reach the major leagues as center fielders, the only trio of brothers in baseball history to accomplish that feat. But it was Vince, 4 years older than Joe, who paved the way. In 1932, Vince was playing for the San Francisco Seals of the Pacific Coast League, the top minor league on the West Coast. Near the end of the season, the team needed a shortstop after their regular starter left to play in Hawaii. Vince convinced his manager, Ike Caveney, to give his 17-year-old brother Joe a tryout. Joe played the final 3 games of the season at shortstop. He was no shortstop. His footwork was awkward, his arm angle inconsistent, but he could hit. The ball jumped off his bat with a sound that made scouts sit up in their seats. The Seals invited him back for spring training, and by 1933, at the age of 18, Joe DiMaggio was the starting right fielder for his hometown team. That first full season, he did something remarkable. From May 27th through July 25th, DiMaggio hit safely in 61 consecutive games, a Pacific Coast League record that still stands more than 90 years later. It remains the second longest hitting streak in minor league history, behind only Joe Wilhoit's 69-game streak in 1919. The streak transformed DiMaggio. He was no longer just another prospect. He was a phenomenon. Fans packed Seals Stadium to watch him hit. Newspapers across California chronicled his daily progress. For the first time in his life, Joe DiMaggio was famous. Years later, DiMaggio would reflect on that streak and what it meant to him. "Baseball did not really get into my blood until I knocked off that hitting streak," he said. "Getting a daily hit became more important to me than eating, drinking, or sleeping." The Major League scouts came calling. Every team in baseball wanted the young outfielder with the sweet swing and the preternatural calm. But in 1934, DiMaggio suffered a potentially career-ending knee injury when he tore ligaments stepping out of a jitney cab. The injury scared off several teams who worried he was damaged goods. The Yankees did not scare easily. Scout Bill Essig had been watching DiMaggio for years. He convinced his bosses in New York that the knee would heal, that the talent was too extraordinary to pass up. The Yankees bought DiMaggio's contract for $25,000 and 5 players, with the agreement that he would remain with the Seals for 1 more season to prove the knee was sound. In 1935, DiMaggio proved the skeptics wrong in spectacular fashion. He batted .398 with 34 home runs and 154 RBIs. The Seals won the PCL championship, defeating the Los Angeles Angels in the playoffs, and DiMaggio was named the league's most valuable player. The fisherman's son from North Beach was ready for New York. Joe DiMaggio made his major league debut on May 3, 1936, at Yankee Stadium against the St. Louis Browns. He was 21 years old, batting third in the lineup, directly ahead of the great Lou Gehrig. The weight of expectation was enormous. The Yankees had not won a pennant since 1932. Babe Ruth had departed 2 years earlier, leaving a void that seemed impossible to fill. The franchise that had dominated the previous decade was searching for its next icon, its next transcendent star. Newspaper headlines across the country had already anointed DiMaggio as the savior, the man who would restore the Yankees to glory. The pressure would have crushed most 21-year-olds. DiMaggio barely seemed to notice. In his first game, he went 3 for 6 with a triple and 3 runs scored. The Yankees won, and DiMaggio looked as if he had been playing in the major leagues for years. Gehrig, watching from the on-deck circle, marveled at the rookie's composure. Gehrig said afterward, "I marveled at Joe's coolness under fire. He certainly was on the spot today. If I were in his shoes, I know I would have been plenty nervous. But he came through like a champion. He is going to be a great help to our club." DiMaggio finished his rookie season with a .323 batting average, 29 home runs, and 125 runs batted in. The 29 home runs set a Yankees rookie record that would stand for more than 80 years, until Aaron Judge shattered it with 52 in 2017. DiMaggio also scored 132 runs and drove in runs at a pace that suggested he would be one of the great run producers of his era. More importantly, the Yankees won the World Series, defeating the New York Giants in 6 games. DiMaggio hit .346 in the series, and in Game 2 he made a spectacular running catch in deep center field that silenced the crowd at the Polo Grounds. President Franklin D. Roosevelt was in attendance that day. It was the first of 4 consecutive championships. DiMaggio had arrived, and so had a new Yankees dynasty. In 1937, DiMaggio led the majors with 46 home runs, 151 runs scored, and 418 total bases. In 1939, he won his first Most Valuable Player award, leading the league with a career best .381 batting average. The Yankees won the World Series again, sweeping the Cincinnati Reds in 4 games. By the time he was 24 years old, Joe DiMaggio had 4 World Series rings and was widely considered the best player in baseball. But his greatest achievement was still to come. The 1941 season began inauspiciously for DiMaggio and the Yankees. By mid-May, the team was mired in 4th place with a 14-15 record. DiMaggio himself was struggling, hitting just .194 over a 20-game stretch. The dynasty that had won 4 consecutive World Series from 1936 through 1939 seemed to be crumbling. On May 15th, the Yankees lost to the Chicago White Sox, 13-1. It was their 5th consecutive defeat. In the first inning, DiMaggio singled off left-hander Edgar Smith, driving in Phil Rizzuto for the Yankees' only run of the game. Nobody noticed, nobody cared. It was just another hit in a losing cause. But DiMaggio kept hitting. The next day, he got a hit, and the day after that, and the day after that. By early June, people started paying attention. DiMaggio had hits in 20 consecutive games, then 25, then 30. The streak became a national phenomenon. Newspapers devoted entire sections to tracking his progress. Radio announcers interrupted regular programming to report his at-bats. Fans across the country gathered around their radios in living rooms and diners and barbershops, waiting to hear whether Joltin' Joe had extended the streak for another day. The streak almost ended several times. In a game against the White Sox on June 29th, DiMaggio went hitless through his first 3 at-bats. In the 8th inning, with the streak at 30 games, he lined a clean single to keep it alive. Against the Washington Senators on July 1st, he was hitless until his final at-bat, when he singled to extend the streak to 38 games. On June 29th, in a doubleheader against the Washington Senators, DiMaggio broke George Sisler's American League record of 41 consecutive games. The Senators' crowd, appreciating the history they were witnessing, gave him a standing ovation. 4 days later, on July 2nd at Yankee Stadium, he surpassed Willie Keeler's Major League record of 44 games, set in 1897 when foul balls did not count as strikes. The record that had stood for 44 years was now his. But DiMaggio was not finished. He kept hitting. Game 45, Game 50, Game 55. The country was transfixed. Les Brown and his band of renown recorded a song called Joltin' Joe DiMaggio that became a hit on jukeboxes across America. The lyrics celebrated the streak in real time, a musical tribute to a feat still in progress. America needed the distraction. War was raging in Europe. Hitler's armies had conquered most of the continent. The Japanese were expanding across the Pacific, and many Americans sensed that their country would soon be drawn into the conflict. The world was falling apart, and here was something pure to focus on. A man trying to get a hit, day after day, against the best pitchers in the world. It was simple. It was dramatic. It was utterly captivating. During those 56 games, DiMaggio batted .408. He collected 91 hits in 223 at-bats. He hit 15 home runs and drove in 55 runs. His 56 runs scored matched the number of games in his streak. Perhaps most remarkably, he struck out only 5 times during the entire 2-month span. 5 strikeouts in 56 games. It was an almost incomprehensible display of bat control, discipline, and focus. On July 16th in Cleveland, DiMaggio extended the streak to 56 games with a 3-for-4 performance against Al Milnar. He was loose, confident, swinging the bat as well as he had all season. The Yankees were rolling, having climbed from 4th place to 1st during the streak. Tomorrow looked like just another night at Municipal Stadium. The next night, July 17th, 67,468 fans packed Cleveland's Municipal Stadium to watch DiMaggio try for 57. It was the largest crowd of the season for a night game anywhere in baseball. Most of them were rooting for DiMaggio to extend the record, even though he was playing against their home team. They went home disappointed. Cleveland manager Roger Peckinpah had prepared for this moment. He positioned third baseman Ken Keltner deep and close to the line, anticipating DiMaggio's tendency to pull the ball. It was a gamble, but it paid off. In the first inning, DiMaggio ripped a hard grounder down the third baseline. Keltner backhanded it beautifully, planted his feet, and threw to first in time. In the fourth inning, DiMaggio walked. In the seventh, he hit another rocket toward third. Again, Keltner made a spectacular backhanded play and threw him out. Two brilliant defensive plays on balls that would have been hits against almost any other third baseman. In the eighth inning, with one last chance, DiMaggio hit a sharp grounder up the middle that took a bad hop. Shortstop Lou Boudreau fielded it cleanly and started a double play. The streak was over. 56 games, a record that has stood for more than 80 years and shows no signs of falling. Pete Rose came closest in 1978, reaching 44 games. No one else has come within 20 games of DiMaggio's mark since then. DiMaggio was stoic afterward. "I cannot say I am glad it is over," he told reporters. "Of course, I wanted it to go on as long as it could." The next day, he started a new hitting streak. He hit safely in his next 16 games, meaning he had reached base safely in 72 of 73 contests. The Yankees won the American League pennant by 17 games and defeated the Brooklyn Dodgers in the World Series in 5 games. DiMaggio won the MVP award, beating out Ted Williams, who had batted .406 that season, the last player to hit over 400. Both accomplishments were extraordinary. But DiMaggio got the award. The streak had captured the nation's imagination in a way that Williams' batting average, remarkable as it was, had not. There was something about the daily drama, the yes or no tension, that made DiMaggio's achievement feel more immediate, more human, more heroic. After the 1942 season, DiMaggio enlisted in the United States Army Air Force. He was 28 years old, at the absolute peak of his powers, having just won his second MVP award. He gave 3 years of his prime to serve his country during World War II. He was stationed primarily in California and Hawaii, playing baseball for military teams and helping with physical fitness training for the troops. His fame made him valuable for morale, and the military used him accordingly. He never saw combat, but he lost 3 seasons that he would never get back. 3 years when he almost certainly would have added to his statistics and his legend. When DiMaggio returned in 1946, he was 31 years old. His body was beginning to show the wear of a decade of professional baseball. His timing was off, his legs were slower. The season was a struggle, and the Yankees finished third, 17 games behind the Boston Red Sox. DiMaggio was not finished. The post-war years brought more success but also more pain. In 1947, DiMaggio won his third MVP award, leading the Yankees to another World Series championship over the Brooklyn Dodgers. He committed only 1 error in the outfield all season. He was still the best player in the American League. In 1948, despite playing with a bone spur in his right heel that caused constant agony, he led the league in home runs with 39 and runs batted in with 155. He finished second in the MVP voting to Lou Boudreau of the Cleveland Indians. It was one of his finest seasons statistically, and he played much of it in pain. The 1949 season tested DiMaggio like nothing before. The heel problems became so severe that he could barely walk, let alone run. He missed the first 65 games of the season. Doctors told him he might never play again. The Yankees, locked in a tight pennant race with the Boston Red Sox, soldiered on without their star. In late June, DiMaggio felt good enough to attempt a comeback. The Yankees were playing a 3-game series at Fenway Park against the Red Sox. Manager Casey Stengel, in his first year with the team, penciled DiMaggio into the lineup and hoped for the best. What happened over those 3 days became the stuff of legend. In the first game, DiMaggio singled in his first at-bat, then hit a home run. The Fenway crowd, despite rooting for the Red Sox, gave him a standing ovation. In the second game, he hit 2 home runs. In the third game, he hit another home run and drove in 3 runs. The Yankees swept the series. DiMaggio had 4 home runs and 9 runs batted in during 3 games after missing half the season. It was perhaps the most remarkable 3-game stretch in baseball history. The pennant race came down to the final weekend, with the Yankees and Red Sox meeting at Yankee Stadium. The Red Sox needed to win just 1 of 2 games to clinch the pennant. Instead, the Yankees won both, with DiMaggio playing every inning despite being exhausted and in constant pain. The Yankees won the World Series that year, defeating the Brooklyn Dodgers in 5 games. And they won again the next year, and the year after that. 3 consecutive championships to close the decade. DiMaggio was a shadow of his former self physically, battling injuries that would have sidelined lesser players. But his presence still lifted everyone around him. His mere appearance in the lineup gave his teammates confidence. His teammate Phil Rizzuto later reflected on those final years. Baseball was not much fun for Joe from 1949 until he quit, Rizzuto said. He was getting older and he was hurt a lot, but he never complained. He just played. In 1951, at the age of 36, DiMaggio knew the end had come. His legs were gone, his shoulder ached constantly. His body could no longer do what his mind demanded. The Yankees offered him another contract, $100,000 for 1 more season. DiMaggio was the first baseball player ever to reach that salary. But he refused to continue. He would not embarrass himself. He would not diminish what he had accomplished. When baseball is no longer fun, he said, it is no longer a game. And I find it is no longer fun for me. He retired after the 1951 World Series, which the Yankees won over the New York Giants. It was his 9th championship in 13 seasons. He had 3 Most Valuable Player awards, 13 All-Star selections, and a lifetime batting average of .325. He had struck out only 369 times in his career, just 8 more than his 361 home runs. No power hitter in history had ever combined such production with such contact. He was elected to the Hall of Fame in 1955 in his first year of eligibility, receiving votes on 89% of the ballots. If Joe DiMaggio had simply been one of the greatest baseball players who ever lived, his story would still be remarkable. But what elevated him into American mythology was what came after. In 1952, a year after his retirement, DiMaggio was reading a newspaper when he saw a photograph of a young actress named Marilyn Monroe. She was wearing a baseball uniform, posing for a promotional shoot. DiMaggio was intrigued. He made phone calls until he found someone who could arrange an introduction. Their first date was at an Italian restaurant in Hollywood. Monroe arrived expecting the stereotypical arrogant athlete. Instead, she found a shy, quiet man who barely spoke. She was captivated. They began a courtship that fascinated the nation. The greatest ball player of his generation and the most glamorous movie star in the world. It was a pairing that seemed almost too perfect to be real. On January 14, 1954, they were married at San Francisco City Hall. The press called it the marriage of the century. Hundreds of reporters and photographers mobbed the courthouse. The couple could barely make it through the crowd. The marriage lasted 9 months. DiMaggio wanted a traditional wife, someone who would stay home and raise children. Monroe was ascending to the peak of her fame, making movies, doing publicity, living the life of a Hollywood star. Their visions for the future were incompatible. The breaking point came in September 1954 during the filming of The 7-Year Itch in New York City. Director Billy Wilder staged a publicity stunt in which Monroe stood over a subway grate while a blast of air sent her white dress billowing above her waist. Thousands of onlookers gathered to watch. Photographers clicked away. The images would become iconic. DiMaggio was there. He watched as his wife exposed herself to the cheering crowd. Witnesses said he had the look of death on his face. The couple fought that night. According to multiple accounts, the argument turned physical. A month later, Monroe filed for divorce, citing mental cruelty. Standing before a judge, she said her husband would go for periods of sometimes 10 days without speaking to her. The marriage was over, but the relationship was not. In 1961, after Monroe's third marriage, to playwright Arthur Miller had also ended in divorce. She suffered a nervous breakdown and was admitted to a psychiatric clinic in New York. She called DiMaggio, and he came immediately. He secured her release and took her to Florida, where the Yankees were holding spring training, so she could rest and recover. They spent time together. They rekindled something. Friends said DiMaggio was planning to ask her to marry him again. On August 5, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her Los Angeles home. She was 36 years old. The cause was ruled a probable suicide from a barbiturate overdose. DiMaggio was devastated. He took charge of the funeral arrangements. He barred Hollywood celebrities from attending. He barred the Kennedys, whom he blamed for contributing to her downfall. At the service, he bent over her casket and whispered, "I love you, I love you." For the next 20 years, until his own death in 1999, DiMaggio had roses delivered to her crypt 3 times a week. He never spoke publicly about her. He never exploited their relationship for publicity or profit. He simply mourned her, quietly and privately, for the rest of his life. He never remarried. In the decades after his playing career, Joe DiMaggio became something more than a former athlete. He became a symbol. In 1967, songwriter Paul Simon was working on a song about the loss of American innocence. He included a line asking where Joe DiMaggio had gone, suggesting the nation still looked to him as a figure of integrity and grace. When Simon met DiMaggio years later, the former ball player asked why he had been singled out. Simon explained that he represented something heroic and dignified from a simpler time. DiMaggio accepted the explanation. He understood his place in the American imagination, even if he never fully embraced it. He became a spokesman for various products, most famously Mr. Coffee, appearing in television commercials for more than 20 years. He made appearances at Yankee Stadium for Old Timers' Day, always introduced as the greatest living ball player, a title he insisted upon. Some found his insistence on that introduction arrogant. Others understood it as the pride of a man who knew exactly what he had accomplished and refused to pretend otherwise. DiMaggio had never been comfortable with fame, but he was always comfortable with excellence. His relationship with the Yankees remained complicated. He feuded with owner George Steinbrenner at times and stayed away from the team at others. But Yankee Stadium was always his home. When he walked onto that field, even as an old man, something in the air changed. The crowd would rise, the cheers would swell, and for a moment, it was 1941 again. Joe DiMaggio died on March 8, 1999. He was 84 years old. The cause was lung cancer and complications from surgery. The tributes poured in from around the world. President Bill Clinton issued a statement saying that America had lost one of the century's most beloved heroes. This son of Italian immigrants, Clinton said, gave every American something to believe in. He became the very symbol of American grace, power, and skill. The funeral was private, as DiMaggio had requested. He was buried in Holy Cross Cemetery in Colma, California, not far from where he had grown up, playing sandlot baseball in the North Beach neighborhood of San Francisco. His legacy endures in ways both tangible and intangible. The 56-game hitting streak remains unbroken. No player has come within 12 games of it since Pete Rose reached 44 in 1978. Paul Molitor got to 39 in 1987. No one else has come close. But DiMaggio's legacy is about more than numbers. It is about the way he played the game, the grace, the elegance, the way he made the difficult look effortless. Yogi Berra, his teammate for years, said that DiMaggio never did anything wrong on the field. He never dove for a ball. Everything was a chest-high catch. He never walked off the field looking anything less than dignified. He was the Yankee Clipper, named after the great sailing ships that glided across the ocean with power and beauty. The nickname was coined by broadcaster Arch MacDonald in 1939, and it stuck because it captured something essential about DiMaggio. He played center field the way those ships sailed, with a smoothness that belied the difficulty of what he was doing. He covered ground without appearing to hurry. He caught fly balls without appearing to strain. He made baseball look like art. He played in an era of segregation and war, and he represented something aspirational to millions of Americans who saw in him the possibility of greatness. He was also a complicated man. He could be cold. He could be distant. He was terrible at relationships, as his failed marriages attested. He was obsessed with his image and his legacy in ways that sometimes alienated those around him. He was not always easy to love, but on a baseball field, there was no one like him. And in the American imagination, there may never be anyone like him again. In the end, Joe DiMaggio was both more and less than the myth that surrounded him. He was a man who came from nothing, the son of a fisherman who thought his boy would never amount to anything. He was a man who found his calling on the sandlots of San Francisco, playing baseball with rocks for bases and an oar handle for a bat, and followed it all the way to Yankee Stadium and immortality. He was a man who loved a woman he could not save, and who spent the last 4 decades of his life mourning her in silence. He was a man who represented an era of American history that has passed into memory, an era of clarity and purpose that we remember more fondly than it perhaps deserves. He was a man who insisted on being introduced as the greatest living ball player because he believed it was true, and because he had earned the right to say so. But he was also simply a baseball player, a man who stepped into the batter's box and tried to hit the ball, a man who ran down fly balls in center field with an elegance that made grown men weep, a man who played a game for a living and played it better than almost anyone who has ever lived. A man who proved that the son of an immigrant fisherman could become the most celebrated athlete in America. Where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio? He went to the same place we all go eventually. But the memory of what he did on those summer afternoons in the Bronx, the memory of 56 consecutive games with a hit, the memory of grace under pressure and excellence sustained across 13 seasons and 9 championships, that memory lives on. It lives on in the record books and in the stories passed down from generation to generation. It lives on every time someone mentions his name, and someone else nods in recognition. He was the Yankee Clipper. He was Joltin' Joe. He was the greatest living ball player. And in the hearts of baseball fans everywhere, he always will be. Like and subscribe for more baseball documentaries. Until next time.